I don't buy into hype very easily. Despite being overwhelmingly bullish on technology as a whole, I mean, look, I'm a YouTuber, I've built my entire career around it, I have always been pretty tepidly conservative when it comes to the next big thing. I mean, I was bearish on wearables, virtual reality, 3D printing, self-driving cars, smart homes, blockchain, Web3, and other technologies. The list could continue on forever. Things that were right on the cusp of changing the world, but then didn't, and still haven't. That's not to say that these things failed at creating multi-billion-dollar industries or that they failed at pushing other innovations. It's not even to say that they might not change the world eventually. For example, I think we will get there with fully autonomous cars within the next few decades. But hype often exceeds reality, leaving us disappointed and dismayed. And as we enter the AI everything frenzy, the Rabbit R1 and Humane AI pin, devices that need no introduction, stand out as the products that make huge efforts to be real AI, going beyond the capabilities of large language models like ChatGPT, and to do something truly mind-blowing. There have been instances where these devices succeed, and we'll talk about those. Unfortunately, they too often bite off more of the carrot than they can chew. I like that, that's a rabbit pun. Making them the two worst products that I've ever reviewed. And they don't stand a chance against Apple and Google once less futuristic but more realistic AI ships later this year. The main argument I've seen online against both the Rabbit R1 and Humane AI pin is, well, why couldn't this just be an app on my phone? It's a good question, and we could spend the next 30 minutes talking about the state of VC-backed hardware startups in 2024, the importance that hardware plays in generating hype and crowdfunded style early adoption, but I think the biggest reason is a practical one. Both of these companies need platform control, which they cannot get on a smartphone. The level of access, data, and availability to do what these things aim to do, they can't work in a sandboxed app environment. Hardware is a necessity, but it's also a deficiency. AI Pin's equipment has been almost universally panned, and, well, do you know what? I pretty much gotta echo what everybody else says. While it feels remarkably premium, and comes in both lighter and smaller than I expected, that's where the compliments end. Battery life is absolutely dismal, requiring me to swap out the booster batteries and then subsequently re-enter my password with the laser projector's less than stellar UI multiple times per day. And with anything thicker than a t-shirt like this, the pin will actually drain faster than the booster pack can wirelessly charge it. It's persistently warm, even when you haven't touched it in like an hour, and under heavy usage gets so toasty that it creates a little red spot on my chest. Despite the low-power Snapdragon SoC, the pin often overheats, whether you ask it too many questions in a row, whenever the projector's on for more than a minute or two, and whenever you've gone out into the sun. But not only that, it gets locked up often, especially when cooling down. I cannot count the number of times that it's made the sound to indicate the projector is on, only to discover that the projector is not, in fact, turned on. Requests often time out, it states it doesn't have a connection to the server, and on more than one occasion has completely frozen altogether, becoming entirely unresponsive. And since there's no buttons on the device, the only way to reboot it is by navigating through the on-screen menus or by asking the pin very specifically to turn off when it is unlocked. If you say, reboot AI pin, or something similar, it will tell you that it's rebooting.
Restarting.
But it's not actually rebooting at all. That's LLMs in action, baby. By the way, both of these options require that the device be unlocked. If the device is locked and frozen because, you've swapped out the booster battery for the 5th time that day, well, good luck, pal. You can either 1, wait for the battery to die again, which frankly doesn't take very long, or 2, make sure you're at home, place it on the charging dock, and hold a paperclip into the dock's reset button. Those are the only 2 options to force reboot it. The Rabbit's hardware, on the other hand, has not been as heavily criticized. In part due to the lower price tag, yes, but also because people just seem to lose all objectivity when teenage engineering waves their Swedish design wand around. Frankly, I think this hardware sucks too. Battery life is dismal, nearly as bad as the AI pin, and that's without a cellular SIM inside. And yes, this is after the update that allegedly fixes the battery. No, it still sucks. The camera on here is too mediocre to use for creation, unlike the AI pin, which can take some decent iPhone 7 looking photos at the quick tap of a chest. The touchscreen on the R1 is severely underutilized, as in, you can't use it at all unless you're typing. And then the scroll wheel, which is the primary way to navigate through the UI, is way too low in sensitivity. Like, it's insane. It's so slow to scroll through every single option. The speaker on the back here is louder than the AI pen speaker, but it sounds a lot worse. And the microphones are significantly less good at picking up quietly spoken commands or those spoken in loud environments. Does the Rabbit R1 have GPS? It sure does, but you would never know because it's completely locationally stupid. More on that in a minute. The reality is that neither of these devices have the processing chutzpah to run any local models beyond speech to text. So you will be waiting to send data to the cloud, wait for processing, and then wait for return data. And then only then will you get your answer. And that's where we move to software, where things get a little better, but also a lot worse. Frankly, you should probably just skip them both and save money and heartache by going with today's sponsor, Monica, an AI assistant available for Chrome, but also desktop and mobile that does, at a very basic level, GPT-4, Cloud 3, and Gemini LLM processing. But it's so much more powerful than that, since it can be used anywhere on the web. You can level up your search game by not just asking a question and getting the answer, but also the backlink citations to those sources on the web. You can summarize entire websites, emails, PDFs, and even, yes, YouTube videos, though you better finish this one. Writing tools provide contextual prompts behind the scenes to the LLM backend, so you can just tell Monica what you want it to write without wasting time engineering description prompts. Generation goes beyond text to in-plugin DALL-E image generation. And we're just scratching the surface here, from grammar checks, which is one of my favorite features, see how easy that was, to text rewrites, image background removal, did you hear that, YouTubers? To translation that accounts for idiomatic differences. Amazing. Monica combines the features of multiple AI tools at the price of just one. Use my link below to get started today for just $9.90 per month. Now this is where I'm going to deviate from other reviewers, but software is also where I think the comparisons between the R1 and AI Pen should end. People keep comparing these, but they're not comparable. They have entirely different interface methodologies, not just the way you interact with them, the AI Pen being designed almost entirely around voice, and the R1 using a hybrid interface that can utilize either or both. But the AI Pen has support for just 4 services, 3 of which right now only ingest context data. So most of what the AI Pen tries to do is within its own ecosystem, which consequentially is rather limited, but does give pretty dependable control. Photos, they sync seamlessly. Phone calls and messages, they're both summarized and written without much frustration. And very useful locational data such as what is the highest rated Indian restaurant within walking distance, what's their top rated dish, and how late is it open tomorrow night. We'll respond with the correct answer eventually. It's not fast.
Suggesting Indian restaurant.
And we'll get to that.
The highest rated.
Now, AI notes are stored in the Humane Center, which you can recall back at any time by asking contextual clues, referencing dates, and more. So, for example, what did I think of Franklin Avenue?
Finding Franklin Avenue. You thought that Franklin Avenue was pretty good, but fairly expensive and not worth the money.
Además, la función de traducción funciona muy bien.
Translation function works very well.
Now, the Rabbit, as you've likely already heard, takes an entirely different approach. Even with a SIM card installed, there's no support for phone calls, sending messages, nor is there much of a web interface. Now, while it can take notes and even summarize voice recordings, which I find pretty cool, everything is logged into this journal timeline, and it can't be searched or collated on the rabbit hole, which sucks. It's basically a black hole. Now, both devices are capable of vision, but their output is very different because their cameras are very different. The AI Pen is simply too wide angle to get much useful information from an image that isn't obvious text, at which point it basically saves you no time to just ask what you have in front of you because you can read sans camera. Now, the Rabbit's camera, while much lower quality, is a lot tighter and resolves more macro-style detail. So, where the AI Pen tells me that there's headphones on my desk, the Rabbit tells me that the headphones look like Odyssey headphones, which they are. The Rabbit also offers other vision features that are not found on the AI Pen, like generating document summaries, recipes, and translating text, all of which your smartphone and laptop can already do faster and better. No special AI required. One party trick that Twitter went wild for was the rabbit creating a .csv file that it emails to you out of a hand-drawn table, which, sorry, wouldn't even be cool if it worked. But it doesn't work, and boy, is not working a theme of the R1. Remember how I said that Humane and Rabbit's approach is very different? Yeah, the Humane AI pin does a limited number of things pretty well, and it's quick to tell you when it can't do something. Sometimes even when it can. Now, the Rabbit's approach is much more like, well, just try it, man, and see what happens. In theory, that sounds amazing. That's more AI. But in practice, everything's just broken. Now, Rabbit has just 4 supported third-party apps right now. That's more than Humane has. However, unlike Humane, these are not using official APIs. Attempt to connect to a service, and a web view of a somewhat sketchy virtual machine that Rabbit runs opens up a browser instance in your web browser. So there's no DoorDash app for Rabbit. DoorDash isn't even involved. It's just a Linux server using the DoorDash website from some computer in New Jersey that you log into, and then it creates a little faux app wrapper for the Rabbit that's in your hand many, many, many hundreds of miles away. Now, in theory, this sounds like an amazing idea because, well, unlike Humane, which is hoping to release an SDK this summer, and I think is under the delusion that the likes of Uber and DoorDash will develop apps for this tiny little platform nobody uses, Rabbit's like, yeah, okay, we know people are not going to make apps for our little square, and that's okay. We will just have the platform make its own apps. In theory, great idea. The problem is that AI is still stupid. And not only are there not an infinite number of services that you can link to, but the 3 that they support all work terribly. Anytime you ask for restaurant data nearby, even if you say, don't open DoorDash, it opens DoorDash. It just doesn't understand intent like the AI pin does. And upon opening DoorDash, which takes forever, by the way, it lists 4 to 5 completely random options. Sometimes they're meals, sometimes it's a drink. Regardless, it is a tiny fraction of the restaurant's whole menu. But that's all you get. Try and ask for more options? Seems like a reasonable thing to do. And, well, you get booted out of the DoorDash UI back to the Rabbit desktop. And because it's not a real app with a card view, you have to start the whole process all over again. So I hope you like your options, and I hope you like the default options on those options, by the way, because the build your own pizza is going to be a complete mystery. You can only select the item itself without modifications. So add your mystery pizza into your cart, navigate to the cart, be okay with the fact that it auto-selected the highest tip option without asking you, check out using your passcode, and it will say, order complete. Now, if you're like me, you'll ask in 20 minutes, hey, where's my DoorDash order? And it's going to say, oh, I don't know, I don't have access to DoorDash. You should probably use your phone. Since, again, it's not a real app. And then, upon opening your phone, you'll realize that it ordered to your house instead of to work, where you actually are, because this thing is locationally idiotic, defaulting to whatever the website auto-selected because for the last time, it is not a real app. If this truly did what it promised, you would be able to say, hey, order me a pizza with prosciutto and arugula through DoorDash and tip the driver $6. And that would be the end of it. Instead, you're using some crappy-ass scroll wheel to spend 6 minutes ordering what would take you 45 seconds to do on your phone. Now, I'm not suggesting that your phone can do everything that Ol Orange and Ferris Friend here can do as seamlessly. It really can't, because Rabbit's large action model and Humane's AI bus, which as far as I'm concerned, they're the same thing, they're just marketing names for intent engines, do handle one incredibly important task. They have to think, okay, I've got a bunch of services at my disposal. Perplexity, GPT-4, Midjourney, etc. Which one should I use? And what is the prompt that I should engineer such that it elicits a suitable response to my user's question? These are not just ChatGPT in a box, and I can prove it. Who is the host of the YouTube channel Snazzy Labs?
Searching now. The host of the YouTube
Finding
channel
YouTube
Snazzy Labs
host.
is
The
Quinn
host
Nelson.
of the
Correct.
YouTube
Also
channel
known as
Snazzy
Snazzy
Labs
Q
is
on
Quinn
other
Nelson.
platforms.
Correct. Now, ChatGPT can get that, but it doesn't get this next one. What is his wife's name?
Quinn Nelson, the host of Snazzy
Finding
Labs,
wife's
is
name.
not married.
Quinn
as per
Nelson's
available
wife's name is
information.
Megan.
All right, so the AI pin got it. This one didn't. It has gotten it before. Don't know why. The point is that GPT 3.5 says that info is not publicly known, and GPT-4 provides an entirely wrong answer. In fact, no LLM I've tried gets the answer right, but these do sometimes. That's the intent engine at work. This time it screwed up. These devices, they're pulling data from multiple places at once, including via web search, to yield a proper answer. And when it works, as you just saw, it's very cool. Nowhere can you find that Megan Tatum is my wife except for a very deep dive Google search. This found it. As for that, I don't know. I stumbled through a terribly worded prompt once, asking what temperature I should pull my pork chop off of the pan to account for carryover cooking to my final doneness of medium. Everything is falling on the floor. Okay. When the AI pin responded with, "How thick is your pork chop?" I gotta admit, I was pretty surprised. And when it told me 120 degrees for a 1-inch chop, a number that was dead on the money, where even a Google search failed to come up with the correct answer without spelunking through a few different web results, I was blown away. Unfortunately, these instances are like needles in a haystack, as you just saw, and more often than not, they offer answers that are incomplete, dead wrong, or they fail to provide an answer at all when your phone offers greater peace of mind in less time. That is the problem with these devices. While you can't necessarily say, what's the highest rated Mexican restaurant in the area that's within walking distance that's open on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. to Siri, you can pull your phone out, open Google Maps, and find the same results, less magically, but more reliably and more quickly. Sorry to the folks at Rabbit, but this thing is just an extra device in your pocket that offers no greater convenience than the other device that's already in your pocket. At least with the AI pin, you could somewhat make the argument that it's more easily accessible, hands-free, and available to you without the added distraction and temptation of your screen-laden phone. While I don't recommend buying either, the AI pin would certainly be my recommendation over the Rabbit if you really wanted to try one of these out, even considering the price delta. It's just a lot better at basically everything. But do you know what else has nearly the same form factor and most of the features offered by the AI pin in addition to a whole lot more? This. You see, spending a few weeks with these gizmos has made me excited about the future of intent-aware AI, but not from these folks, from the likes of Apple and Google. You see, the two biggest issues that I think these products face are problems that quite literally do not exist for the largest smartphone operating systems in the world. The first being that Apple and others, they design their own silicon. Much of what makes these so brutally painful is that they are dog slow at everything because they cannot do anything on device. Apple, on the other hand, has been putting neural processing units of enormous size into their mobile chips for years, and they're now literally showing us their hands prior to M4 and WWDC. How? Well, since December of last year, they've released MLX, an ML framework for AI to run on Apple Silicon. They've released MGIE, a prompt-based image editor. Ferret UI is another Apple AI model that can navigate through finger-focused phone apps automatically a la Rabbit. And just last week, they released OpenELM, 4 small language models designed to run locally on a device like an iPhone that would handle text-based tasks like writing messages and emails in milliseconds without ever utilizing the internet. As if that wasn't obvious enough, Tim Cook has literally said this year the generative AI features are coming in 2024. When do you see that from Apple? It could not be more obvious. Are you getting it? AI is not going to replace our phones. The AI revolution is going to happen on our phones and watches. I feel quite confident in predicting that later this year, Apple will allow you to, open an image in your camera roll and tell Siri to turn it black and white and send it to Sally without you having to do anything. For the riskier LLM and image generation models that often find themselves guilty of inaccuracy, the ones that we spent the last 15 minutes talking about, Apple will say, hey, this info was provided by OpenAI or Google Gemini. I mean, what other reason would there be for ongoing discussions between these companies? But perhaps, most of all, Apple has the App Store, a license to print money with developers lined up to sell their wares. And unlike Humane, that has to beg developers to come over to their platform, or Rabbit, that has to do all of the work themselves, Apple can just release SDK frameworks that give access to these on-device AI models that will be adopted by millions of apps and developers within months of release. Apple and Google will win the AI race because they've already won the smartphone race. Cute as these devices may be, they just don't stand a chance. We'll talk more about what is in store from Apple and Google once they hit public announcement time. But I have a question for you, and that is, what do you hope to be in store? Or maybe you're already using AI. Tell me what you enjoy. What is it and why? Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.